What's up, Bobby?
How's it going, man?
Good. What's happening?
Not much. Just getting ready for this big slate. I got did a lot of extra research. I haven't been feeling great, so I've been home a lot this weekend, and did a lot of extra research, which may lead me to absolutely nothing. But I've got a bunch of weird plays.
Great. Is Rohde joining us?
Rohde should be here any minute. I think. I didn't get anything that he wasn't going to be, so I would assume he'd be here. But there he is. Speak of the devil. What's up, guys in the chat? What's up, y'all? Let's get it today. It's a big day. It's funny, these games sheets. I wanted to point out a couple things that I just noticed, some trends for the year real quickly. One, the unders in the games this year are I think they're 85-30, 85-53 and something, in some amount of ties. The unders are just absolutely demolishing everything. And just having said that, I actually like a lot of the overs today. So wanted to throw that out there. I think this actually is a little bit of a better slate than I thought, but I might just think that because I've been stuck at home all weekend and kind of sick, trying to figure things out. So I've been turned on by this slate a lot more than I thought I was going to be. How about you, Sheets? Any overall thoughts before we get into?
Yeah. So there was one real big piece of news which was going to drive like a lot of stuff, and it just came through. I think they said that Chase is going to play for the Bengals, and if he didn't play, then we were talking about like 4-man Bengal 3K receiver stacks or something like that.
Although I think we wouldn't want to do that, but yeah, I hear you.
You know what I mean? But that would be like something to talk about. I mean, we're still going to be talking about Bengals receivers anyway. But I deliberately wanted to wait as long as I could before putting projections up, but I couldn't. But I am going to just re-put them up again. I just put up kind of like a 65% version. I'm going to put up, after we get off of this, more like 100% version. Because I think that a lot of the projection systems were kind of like hedging.
Really? I just thought everybody assumed Chase was in.
Oh, no. They just.
But I could be wrong. I could be completely wrong on that.
In any case, I'm going to run them again. Oh, there it is. And but overall, I think, listen, it's a smaller slate, 10-game slate, but there are pretty obvious places to go and a little less obvious places to go, and I think you can make a case for almost every game if you want to know the truth. Maybe like a couple that I would stay away from, but not many. I mean, there's angles like all over the place this week, I think.
I agree with that totally. All right, Rohde, how you doing, man?
Good, man. How's it going?
Good. You got the Chargers sweater on. It's time to go. Chargers on.
I do. I'm liking some of the ownership on them today. I think it's light.
I know. We got light ownership on this. And by the way, I'm all over that. We'll get into that in the games or whatever. Goff is my highest owned quarterback, and I love Herbert as a sneaky one. No one's going to play Keenan Allen. It just feels good when you're not going to get any ownership on these guys.
Yeah, for sure. I hear some other people talking about it, so it's got to come up some. But man, I don't know how they only got so little percent on them right now. I don't know.
It's just hard to play like Amon-Ra and Keenan Allen in the lineup. Just difficult to do.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But it's doable. Anyway, all right, let's get into position by positions because I think there's a lot of ways to go. As Sheets was sort of saying, every game, the more I was digging, every game started to seem a little more appealing to me, which is a little bit worrisome. So I'm trying to narrow it down, but a little more. So let's go to Rohde next at quarterback, and then I'll finish up, and then we'll go down in that order. Rohde will start the next one.
So it seems as though the very, very obvious place to go is to Joe Burrow for Cincinnati. He's playing well in general. He projects well on his own, and considering that now with Higgins out, there are secondary receivers that are really, really cheap that you could use in stacks. It's going to make him a really, really appealing play. You could also, well, we'll get to the receivers in a minute, but because of the receivers available and because Burrow himself is playing very well, he's going to show up as a very, very logical play. And I'm obviously going to have a bunch of him. The guy who, again, is kind of an not angle play, but an angle to talk about is what to do with Dak Prescott. Okay. Because he's going to project well because his team has a team total of 28 points. Even though it's only a 38-point total, like 28 of that is from Dallas. So it is a very, very high team total, and he's going to project very well. But when it comes to GPPs, I'll get your opinion on this after I finish this. Is what kind of like upside from that median like score does he really have? And I think it's an interesting question. After that, I actually am not at least on current runs, on Goff and the Seattle and the Charger game as much as maybe you guys are. I'm kind of a glutton for this play. I might end up with like a good amount of Kyler Murray and just bite that thing. It's probably actually be pretty popular at the end of the day. But I do like the receivers over there. And then I'm also I'll throw in another guy I'm getting more than 10% of. This seems like really awful, but Josh Dobbs from Minnesota. I mean, second time not knowing playbook. Maybe he knows the playbook a little bit better this time. So that's pretty much where I am. And the one quarterback which I would love to get more of, and I might actually force it in, is Geno Smith. So that was the that's kind of my overall pool.
Well, as Sheets always says, somebody's got to win, because I do have some of that, but a lot of the stuff I just didn't even. I'm going a little different direction today, I think. How about you, Rohde? What do you got at quarterback?
Yeah, I mean, I like a lot of those calls. Obviously, Herbert is going to be lower owned, projects pretty good. Goff, I really like because his price is a little bit down, and he's not getting a lot of ownership. I really like that game. I just think because a lot of people are trying to get like Murray at 5.9 and some of these other cheaper quarterbacks. A lot of people like Burrow in that game, and another quarterback no one's going to play in that same game is CJ Stroud again. Just lit it up last week. And no one's going to play him. Everyone's going to Burrow, and you got Stroud with Tank. I mean, people are going to play the weapons, but I mean, Stroud looks a little lower. He's a little pricey, same price as Burrow a little bit. I like the Dobbs call a little bit. I did build a lineup with him at 5.5. He's getting a little lower ownership, so I like that as well. Yeah, so I'm really centered around a few games today. I'm not as spread out as I've normally been. I know all the games are kind of nice, but I like pieces in a lot of the games. I just think I'm keeping this like a core stacks and then spreading out my pieces this week. This is kind of how I'm doing this week.
Yeah, I've gone a little different. I hear you, but I actually am a little more spread out at quarterback, but I'm doing the same thing. We're keeping the core pretty tight, but spreading a little bit more out at quarterback. My highest owned quarterback is Jared Goff. My second highest owned quarterback is Will Levis. I'm not sure if other people are on this, but I think it's a really, really good play. And I think Baker on the other side of that game is a really good play. You have the two biggest pass funnel teams playing each other. And we've seen these games just get wild with Tampa Bay because they really have trouble stopping the passing. Look at last week with CJ Stroud. So I like Will Levis to do his best CJ Stroud impression this week. As I mentioned, I do have like 8% Baker on the other side. Joe Burrow is my third highest owned quarterback. Sam Howell, my fourth. Justin Herbert, my fifth. Then I am getting to the Kyler Murray, Baker, as I mentioned, CJ Stroud, like 6%. Geno Smith, 6%, but I do have Geno in one of my two big FanDuel ones, so it's actually a little higher for me. And I just forced in 5% of Lamar, skinny, or empty stacks, just because there's no other. If there's any quarterback that's going to put up 35 plus fantasy points today, it's going to be Lamar. And it's weird that no one will play him. I get it. The Cleveland defense is awesome, but as I've mentioned to everybody before, you put a good pass rush against Lamar, all you're asking for is more rushing yards. And that's what's going to happen. So I like the skinny stack Lamar, or potentially even an empty stack on like FanDuel, where you can play all these other great plays and use Lamar at no ownership and hope that he wins the position with 2 rushing touchdowns and 100 plus yards rushing, something like that. All right, moving over to running back. We'll start with you, Rohde. Certainly a lot of options at this position. There's going to be some chalk, and I think there's lots of things we can do to avoid it. What do you got at running back?
Yeah, this is kind of a wonky position today. We do have some cheap guys that I kind of like. We got some of the guys we've been talking about lately, like Eckler and Pollard. Two guys have been up there lately on the teams we've been playing. Pollard's getting a little bit more chalk. Eckler's not as much due to his price. CMC's obviously here this week gets a lot of pass volume, a lot of work. So yeah, he's up there not as much. The chalky one's going to be Joe Mixon against Houston. I mean, the Bengals team, they're getting a lot of chalk in that game. So a couple places I want to avoid it. Maybe Aaron Jones a little bit again this week. I know Bobby's got him on his exposures in the premium Discord channel, guys. If you guys are in there, check that out. If you want to get in there, subscribe, check us out on TrueDFS. So he's got all his exposures in there, all his builds in there. It's pretty good. And you get all that at TrueDFS. So, and another one that we got for Singletary. 4.7. He's in that same game, but a little bit lower ownership than Mixon. He was chalk last week and didn't do very good. They pass a lot, but maybe this week he gets the 2 touchdowns. I like
probably worth
Alexander.
noting that last week again, as we mentioned, you just don't run the ball against Tampa Bay and Tennessee, but that's
that's what we
better matchup today.
That's what we said last week. I was kind of low on Singletary last week. I might play him a little bit more this week, but I do like a lot of other guys that have a pivot for Singletary. I like Najee Harris at 4.9, and I was talking about Alexander Madison at 5.5 with no Akers this week a little bit. His ownership's trending up a little bit. It was a little bit lower earlier this week, but I think Madison's got a good price at 5.5. Mm-hmm. I know you don't like Rachaad White against Tennessee because of they pass more a lot, but he's real chalky. I'm probably under on this, but I have sprinkled a little bit in just due to his price. So yeah, those are some of the guys I'm on, and I might have thrown David Montgomery in some too at 6.9 here. So yeah, that's just kind of what I'm doing.
I would just want to make a quick note on the David Montgomery thing, because I was trying to dig into this a little bit. I'm hearing, I do think they'll give Montgomery some work, don't get me wrong, but the coach has specifically come out and said the second half of the year, all year long, he's been saying Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be getting a lot more looks. I actually think they'll play together a little bit, and I think Gibbs will even line up as a wide receiver on some plays. So I actually like the Gibbs idea, but I understand the Montgomery is, literally going to be 0.5% owned. So I think it's interesting.
Yeah, I just threw him in a couple because I like that game. So I was building a lot of stacks in that game, and I just got to him in a few lineups. So
yeah, I'll go through my exposures real quick, then we'll go to sheets. I have more Mixon than I do anybody else. I don't necessarily love that, so I have pivoted onto a lot of Aaron Jones, as you can see from those of you who are in the premium Discord. And I do have some Devin Singletary, but I'm pivoting a little bit more of that over to, as you mentioned, Najee Harris and Alexander Madison. I really like Kenneth Walker today, especially because I like Hal, I like the whole game. So I think Kenneth Walker is getting a little bit overlooked. Mostly you want to throw the ball to beat Washington, but I still think that he's just top 5 running back, way too cheap, and a good enough game environment where he can really get it going. I also have 15% of Jahmyr Gibbs, as I mentioned. I'm going to be ahead on this guy in general. May not get all the touches, but I'm still going to get there. Same with Brian Robinson, sort of a similar outlook of both those guys. And then because I have the money and because I can do some things, I have, I think I have 14% McCaffrey and 20% of Eckler. I don't love Eckler, but I don't love, just on paper, I don't love the matchup, but I really want exposure to that game. I love the over in that game. So I just wanted to get to a little bit of that. So that's basically where I'm at running back. How about you, Sheets?
Did either of you mention Tony Pollard at all?
Oh, I mentioned Pollard, but yeah, he's my 4th highest owned right now. But I don't love it. I actually would like to get less of him.
It's definitely like the pure play, right? He's
the obvious, yeah.
It's 16.5 point spread, and they kind of probably want to get him a good game, I imagine. And it's gonna naturally. He's going to be pretty popular, I think, because what's going to happen is the optimizers are going to correlate the Dallas defense with with Pollard. So if you want to do a little something different, like you could force out all lineups with Pollard and the defense together. You know what I mean? And you that's actually a pretty decent little rule. You could play a max 1 Pollard Dallas defense. Because just to get a little bit different, because how volatile defenses are in general.
Yeah, and also you don't want to pay for the thing is you don't pay $4,400 for a defense to pair him with an expensive running back. You're playing that defense hoping that they get 9 sacks, which is possible by the way today, and they get a touchdown, running back, which is going to take away from Pollard in some sense. So go ahead, Chiefs.
So first, I'll comment on some of the plays. It's a weird for me. It's like a weird week at running back because all the plays seem terrible, but you know what I mean. Right. When I say that. Joe Mixon, it was as recently as a week ago was considered dust. You know what I mean? How can anybody play Joe Mixon and now he's 30% owned? Devin Singletary, it's nobody learned their lesson last week. You know what I mean? And I'm getting a bunch of him. Tony Pollard.
Go ahead.
Tony Pollard, we talked about. Najee Harris, all of a sudden people are playing. I don't know. Rachaad White showing up, and as you mentioned, Tennessee's kind of tough to get to. The play that I happen to like Etienne from Jacksonville, and let's I want to talk a little bit more about the Kenneth Walker thing that you brought up, because one of the reasons why I think he's not going to be played is they've been seeing a lot of Charbonneau as getting like the work, but you could argue that all of those examples were pretty game script based, like one of the games was like over, another one that they really needed. So I don't necessarily think it's Charbonnet's backfield or even trending that way. And I think Kenneth Walker is a really, really good play. He's also a late game, so you could screw around with that. And the only other guy I'll mention is the return. I guess I don't even know. I keep forgetting he was out, but James Conner for Arizona. So I'm going to throw him in there, and I have literally no opinion on these Atlanta running backs. It's like always kind of ridiculous. And I guess I'll ask your opinion, Rohde, on whether you go back and play Aaron Jones again.
Yeah, I mentioned it slightly. Like you could go back and play. I mean, maybe he ramps up a little bit more this week than he did last week, but he got a lot of usage still. So I think he's in play. I don't have a lot of them, but I'm definitely playing some of them. I know Bobby got some in his exposure too. So
yeah, and I want to touch real quickly on the Charbonnet thing. First of all, I like Charbonnet. We were talking about a showdown slate today. I'd be loving that guy. I want to point out the last two games. First of all, I got smoked. They just got destroyed at Baltimore. Probably the third best defense in football, maybe the second best defense in football. Then they couldn't move the ball at all against Cleveland, the actual best defense in football. And we're going to take Kenneth Walker as being, okay, they're going to play Charbonnet instead. No, they had a pass catching back because they were down in the game a lot more often. When you're down 3+ scores in the second half, you're not going to be running the ball with Kenneth Walker. I don't expect that to be the case today against Washington. Now, they are okay against the run, but it's a very different thing when you come against Baltimore and Cleveland. And I think Charbonnet was in there more for the pass catching downs, which is the reason why he's getting the work. I think it's a little bit of it's not a trap because people aren't really going to do it. But I heard people talking on other shows about playing Charbonnet, and I think that would be a terrible mistake. I do think that the one other thing I wanted to add, and it's for the afternoon only, I think Tyler Algier, I'm not going to play him on the full slate, but at 4,700 in the afternoon slate is a really interesting play. And actually, you could consider him for the full slate too. He's still getting a bunch of the rushing work. He's literally, basically the goal line back, and it's a great matchup for him. So I'm kind of interested in Algier. I like Bijan on the main slate, Algier on the afternoon slate. Just I think it's good enough to get different. All right, let's start it off with you, or I'll start it off really quick.
Wait, before we go back to that, you were going to push back a little bit on my kind of like cavalier assessment on all those running backs being terrible. It seemed like you waited for me to finish, and you were going to comment on some of that.
I agreed with you that it's a very everything seems skeptical to me. And even the Mixon play does too. I just think the opportunities are hard to ignore, and he does really, he's better without Higgins in general.
Okay.
But Singletary was what I was going to push back on. Is just saying that it's such a different matchup and the way they're going to play this game than they played against Tampa Bay. And I think Singletary will be more involved today. It would be nice to see Stroud occasionally throw the ball to the running back for Singletary's sake, but that's where you're going to. I think you could get him in a PPR situation today and have him come through. I was just trying to point it out. It was such a bad matchup.
Okay.
And this week is not so bad. All right. Wide receiver, a lot to do here. I probably have too much Tank Dell. I had a very hard time not wanting to include the Houston receivers and Cincinnati receivers a lot of places, and they're going to be chalky. So I have Tank Dell as my highest owned right now, but I will be getting different with a bunch of different plays. So Tank Dell or Irwin and Chase, Trenton Irwin. I probably am going to switch some of that Trenton Irwin to Phillips from Tennessee. People may not have noticed he had a really good first half the other night with Levis. It's a great matchup, as I mentioned. He's basically the number 2 receiver, and he's a flat 3K. So Trent Irwin is the number 3 receiver, and he's a flat 3K. So maybe playing a little bit of that 3K stuff is a little better than just going with the Irwin. And I know that Phillips is not a name that people are talking about. It doesn't project well, but I'm just telling you, we don't know what a young quarterback's going to do, and they're in a passing situation. I guess you could say he's a third string behind Westbrook-Ikhine, but Levis has looked for him a lot more than he's looked for Westbrook-Ikhine. So I'm going to take some shots with Kyle Phillips. In terms of high ownership, Godwin, Evans, McLaurin, 20% Keenan Allen, and I'm going to do it, Cheats. I know it's not right. Well, I don't know if it's not right. I think it's going to happen at some point. It really looks bad for him for his career at the moment, Jameson Williams. But I'm still going to take that stab. And if there's one time you could see a guy just, how did this guy break the slate and nobody played? All this stuff. This is the kind of matchup against the Chargers you want. So I'm going to gamble on that one a little bit. And I'm also going to play a little bit of Josh Reynolds just to get exposure to that game. And then the Philly receivers sort of rounded out for me. So I know I mentioned a lot of names, but I have a lot of guys in the 20% range today. So I'm kind of spread out at wide receiver. What do you got, Sheets? And then we'll go to Rohde.
Well, starting with that Cincinnati game, you had Jamar Chase, Irwin, and Tyler Boyd, right? And all three of those are really good plays. If in fact, Chase were going to be out, we're going to be talking about that other dude. Now his name escapes me. But there was another there's a 3K flat guy who was going to be no, not Irwin. The guy under Irwin. Dude, I'm like Showdown player. Remember, like guys like Irwin are like chalk to me. You know what I mean? Like, so no, it's the other guy. I don't have to worry about him anymore.
I don't think anybody was ever.
Oh, the one with the name we can't say. I can't pronounce.
Exactly. Yeah. Anyway, he's not playing him anyway. But Irwin and Tyler Boyd are obviously, they're Tyler Boyd's like always in play, by the way. You've been keeping me on that for like a while now. I mean, like regardless of who's there, Tyler Boyd always gets in there. But Boyd and Irwin, I have a bunch of that. Tank Dell, like you mentioned from Houston, and I'll go right back to Noah Brown as well. From that same situation. Trying to find some differences here because listen, St. Brown you mentioned, and listen, dude, like you said, like who's going to want to play? It's kind of hard to play St. Brown and Allen together, but it's not hard to play. You want to win $1 million, play Jameson Williams and Quentin Johnson together or something like that. So and both those guys are just volatile with upside. You know what I mean? So. If those are also really good late swap opportunities, they're also very good late slate opportunities, and something to consider. But you mentioned Dell, you mentioned a couple of other guys I'll throw in, I guess. Those Arizona dudes like Marquise Brown and the leader of the free world, the Magic of Mark Wilson, whatever his name was, along with the Dallas, CeeDee Lamb again. Deontay Johnson is always going to look good nowadays. Jordan Addison from Minnesota. So nothing really like off the beaten path. I don't know if you had mentioned Jackson Smith and G-Bug from Seattle, but I'll throw him in there also. Nothing particularly earth-shattering, though, if you want to know the truth.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me. How about you, Rohde? What do you got for wide receivers?
Yeah, it seems we're talking about a lot of cheap receivers. That means we must be putting a lot of these expensive studs in today or something.
I don't know.
Or leaving 11,000 on the table.
We're leaving 11,000 on the table. We got 3K guys, 4K guys. So hey, one 3K guy we didn't mention, you guys didn't mention, is Rondell Moore for Arizona. I really like him today a lot. He's a lower owned one. I like with Murray back this week. Everyone's talking about Marquise Brown here at receiver, but I like Moore to step it up again. Talented athletic player. I like him a lot today. Irwin at 3K is another guy. JSN or the Smith guy that she just mentioned, I like him cheap. Tank Dell I getting a lot of. Ridley's also cheap if you want to go to a Jacksonville receiver. Christian Kirk and Ridley get a lot of volume. No Zay Jones. They should get a lot of work. We'll see, but the defense for the 49ers is really good, obviously. Tyler Boyd at 4,600 I really like in that game. Also Noah Brown at 3,700 in that same game on the other side from Dell, a little bit lower owned. Quentin Johnson 44-1 they're talked about like that. Obviously Keenan Allen, I'm on St. Brown, almost a lock for me today. I gave a really good premium Discord stat on his stats, and what the Chargers do on defense is not good for his play against the zone. I mean, he's just going to eat it up today, so I got a lot of him. I'm lower on Chase, although he's in. CeeDee Lamb's dealing with an injury. I'm lower on him. Jordan Addison's another guy I like a little bit, 5'9" in that game. Deontay Johnson, we mentioned 5'4". Brandon Ayuk's getting a lot of talk too this week, but Debo is back, but 7-1. I mean, someone's going to score there. I kind of rather stay off that game a little bit. I like Jacksonville defense today more. So,
Ooh.
yeah. So, Yeah, I mean, those are the receivers. I'm just mixing and matching in. I'm spreading out a lot at receiver today, getting a lot of these guys that I mentioned, and I'm literally just like playing Chargers and Detroit stacks, and then mixing all these guys in. I'm going a little crazy today.
I'm gonna ask you again, Bob. I know you went over receivers, but I forgot if you emphasized them enough. Only because you've been on him like more than other people, and he's been killing it. How heavy are you? If you didn't mention already, I apologize. On DeAndre Hopkins.
He's my third highest owned receiver.
He is. Okay, good. All right.
Yeah.
I was imagining that. All right. So,
yeah.
Okay.
And what's really weird is like, I mean, honestly, I know that, there's the one monster game or whatever, but like, I actually feel like at this price, he should be like the highest owned receiver. I might end up with the most of him of anybody. And if I look at FanDuel too, I just forget to mention that there's a couple guys like Quentin Johnston, by the way. I'm totally happy to go back to Quentin Johnston. I don't care if he only has 100 career receiving yards. They're going to throw the ball. They don't have that many other guys to throw it to. Both tight ends too, but I'll be playing them as well. I do like the Quentin Johnston thing. I want to point out he's cheap on FanDuel, as is Jackson Smith and Jigba. By the way, Smith and Jigba was getting the most looks from Geno lately, so wanted to throw that out as well. All right, let's talk tight ends. Rohde, you're going to start us off. Who are you playing? What chalk are you fading? Because there's going to be some pretty heavy stuff, and there's a lot of guys we can choose from.
What's the heavy stuff?
Before you get into this, I just want to make like kind of an offbeat comment because I have this New England Indianapolis game over here. Like as bad as these Thursday games or whatever these like off slate games can be, this is like even worse than them all. You know what I mean? Like. This is like amazing how bad these teams' offenses are. This is insane. All right, go ahead.
I totally forgot there was a game this morning.
I mean, when are people going to learn? You just have to slot the defense and the captain like every slate, and then move on from there.
It seems to be working a lot lately.
So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Back to tight ends. We got McBride for Arizona, another good play that everyone's liking at 3,500. 22% owned. Hawkinson at 5K as well in that game. Mark Andrews isn't going to be owned. Obviously, Lamar. Cleveland's got a good defense, but I mean, he gets a lot of work from Lamar, so he's viable. He's expensive. Dalton Schultz in that Cincy game. I like him at 4.9. Sam Laporta, obviously, projecting really well. Looks really good as a rookie this year. 5.7, a little pricey, but he's in that good game environment that I like. Evan Ingram's gonna get a lot. His ownership was higher. I think it come down a little bit. I thought more people would be on that. 4 or 5. He gets a lot of looks from Lawrence, so that's viable. You got any cheap guys? I like Chig Okonwa in that Tennessee game at 3K. That's a guy I'm getting a little bit because I'm diving cheap. Maybe the Cincinnati tight ends too. I'm feeling one of those are going to score. Irv Smith or Tanner Hudson. They're going to take everybody's.
Tanner Hudson or the other one, or this Drew Sample.
Yeah, there's 3 of them actually. My brother texted me. He's like, "Yeah, Eddie 3 could score." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm just gonna take a shot with Hudson or Irv." But yeah, I forgot about Sample. I kind of like that. I'm sprinkling a little Kittle and a little Kyle Pitts. That Atlanta Arizona game is kind of a run back on that side. I like Pitts a little bit. So those are kind of my main tight ends today.
I think Pitts as a run back is a really good call because for anybody who actually, this is what you learn when you look, there's CJ Stroud was 4% owned. CJ Stroud stacks, double stacks, triple stacks, whatever. Triple stacks was probably about 2% of that owned. But then you're fighting all against each other. What's going to happen is if you play Kyler, you're going to end up everybody's going to end up with McBride in that lineup. So having Pitts in that lineup is a really good way of differentiating, just in my opinion. Sheets. Oh, sorry. I guess I'll go. No, we were going around. I'll go to my tight ends. I have some interesting takes here. I think that there is a really Hawkinson is supposed to be they're saying he's going to play, but he's supposed to be very limited. I don't know how real that is. I do think he's a really strong play if he was going to play the time, but I'm worried about that. And there's a lot of good receivers or good tight ends around him. But Dalton Schultz is my highest owned, the chalky one. My second highest owned, who I have a ton of, is Sam Laporta. I really like Laporta today. I love that game, as I talked about. Then you get McBride, Thomas, Okonkwo. But in terms of dollar value, in my higher buy-in tournaments at less than 1% ownership, I'm going to play Taysom Hill. I don't understand, the writing's on the wall here, guys. We don't need to keep overthinking this one. Yes, he's more expensive now. Yes, but when he was 3K, This guy has scored double-digit points in his last 4 games. There aren't that many tight ends who can say that. I don't know if there's any other tight ends who can say that. He scored 20 in both of his last 2 games, and he has 20 rushing attempts and 5 passing attempts for the past 2 weeks. I have no reason not to play this guy. And he's also catching the ball now from Derek Carr. So he caught his first touchdown a couple weeks ago. I think that he's a really, really good get different play. And another one I'm going to go back to a little bit is Cade Otton, then both of the Chargers tight ends, Parham and Everett. Sheets, what do you got for tight end?
Yeah, so I'll go a step further. So you Trey McBride, Evan Engram, Hawkinson, Schultz, Laporta, like all these tight ends, right? I mean, even Kittle. Like all these guys, they're on the field, they get receptions, whatever. And then when they get down kind of near the goal line, they sometimes get looks, right? Sometimes get opportunities. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they go over. Taysom Hill, like, literally gets a touchdown opportunity every game. I mean, like they deliberately design their entire inside the 10-yard line scheme for Taysom Hill to be involved in a touchdown, whether it be running, passing, receiving, kicking, whatever. You know what I mean? Like whatever they do. So it is, I think, a little silly to not play him for just because of the way results distribute and the way points are scored. You just had that kind of upset, not to mention, you know, these 3rd and 1s and 3rd and 2s. And
he breaks 1. That's all you need.
People talk about like snap counts and things like that. But all like snap counts are not created equal. You know, like you could find, for example, tight ends or any player who's on the field for like 95% of the snaps, who's literally in there to block or do nothing. You know what I mean? And there are other guys, even like receivers, who are on the field for 80% of the snaps, but they're really like have like 75% of the time decoys or whatever. And there are other guys that they literally like script plays for. So like whenever they come into the game, like it's because they're going to give them the ball. You know what I mean? So like Hill, I think like even if he played, if you gave me 12 snaps, right, with Taysom Hill, I mean, I probably would take it. So yeah. What?
It's not like he's playing 12 snaps as a tight end. He's playing 12 snaps as a quarterback.
Right.
You know?
Right. I mean, how many times do you have with legitimate like passing upside?
Right.
But as far as the pure tight ends, I mean, just the normal guys like Trey McBride is obviously a really good play. But like you said, if everybody's going to be playing Kyler Murray with the Trey McBride stuff, I mean, you could play Rondale Moore, as Rohde was saying, and Brown or Wilson, leave McBride out and do something else at tight end, not to, you know, one of them being the Kyle Pitts, you know, whatever. But there were some good plays like Engram. I didn't hear about the Hockenson being limited. I saw a questionable, but I guess something to monitor. And then the guys, the usual guys like Schultz, Laporta, Ferguson, even Kittle's always whatever. You want to play, what's his name? That DeAndre Hopkins, Cade Otton, certainly reasonable. The other side of that game. So yeah, the tight ends are the usual guys pretty much every week.
Yeah, I agree. But one thing is, it is interesting that these, like, Taysom Hill is going to have no ownership because of Hockenson and because people just don't know what to do with them.
Yep.
You're going to have almost no ownership on Laporta. I think it's just boom. They're boom. That's the easy way to go. Those are going to be my most popular tight ends by the end of by the time I'm done. It just makes sense. All right, by the way, I do think McBride is an incredibly good. If you're playing cash and you're not playing McBride, I think you're just doing something terribly wrong. You cannot argue that this guy has a good play. He should probably be at least $1,000 more expensive, especially with Kyler back. Anyway, all right, we'll move over to defense and special teams. Why don't we start off? I guess it's my turn to start off, I guess. Let me get my exposures here. No shocker. I am going. I had the money to spend in some spots, partly because I'm taking some iffy, cheap receivers. The Cowboys are by far my highest owned defense on both sites. Followed by just a bunch of taken shots. The Cardinals 2,500, the Jags at 2,400. This is an order. I do have some Cleveland just because I respect their defense so much, but I don't love going against Lamar in general. Some of the Giants because they're 2,100. Commanders, Bengals, Chargers, and what's it called? And the Lions rounded out for me. Those are the ones I'm using the most. How about you, Sheets?
So my usual thing, I don't recommend playing more than 20% of a defense. And
what about if it's against Danny DeVito?
Right. So if it's against Danny DeVito, then we have to examine the fact that they're 4,200, right? So if they're 4,200, they restrict the salaries of the players that can get 25, 30 points, and that's what usually moves people away from a $4,200 defense. But like you said, if you're going to pay up for that, you better be playing it for the 8 sacks and the 20 points, or the 15 points, or at least, like, if they get 10 or 12 points, I don't think that's going to do it. Because it doesn't avail you of anything else. Like, for example, like if you play the other popular defense this week, which is probably going to be the Giants, it's a totally different way to play. Like the Giants, nobody's expecting the Giants to put up 14 points.
Yeah, you hope to get 4 or 5.
Yeah, you hope to get 4 or 5, and the reward from that, you hope that smashes. You know what I mean? You hope that all the money you're able to use to pay up for other things smashes. I currently in current builds would get 30. If I did nothing, we get 32% of the Giants. I have this weird feeling you're just supposed to X them out. In like the Millie Maker. I think that in like in I don't know, Wildcats or whatever it is, like the spies and stuff like that, you can play them. I just don't think you win the whole tournament with a 6, out of your defense. And I know that it's probably happened, and I think the Commanders were a good example of it earlier in the year. Like, they were really popular, they were really cheap, they only scored 9, and it was in the winter. It just something feels wrong about playing a team that, they could certainly, the ball can tip up in the air, and they could listen, if the ball gets tipped up in the air and they get a pick 6 and they lose the game 30-6 and they still get like 9 points or something like that, you know what I mean? Like that's going to be good. But in the absence of that, it just feels like you're supposed to go elsewhere. So this is what I like. Okay. And I'm glad I like these a little bit because it brings up something about one of the chalkier spots. So you mentioned this a little earlier this week. So yeah, obviously this Bengals Houston game like rates to go off, and you have Houston who's coming off of CJ Stroud, like a record performance by a rookie quarterback or whatever it is. But dude, this Bengal defense is no joke, and if CJ Stroud all of a sudden is going to think he can fling the ball over the field, whatever it is, the Bengals can go off in this game, and that whole game could sort of bust something. You know what I mean? Like the Bengals could put it to Houston, which makes things a little bit different. Now, again, that doesn't mean not to play the Cincinnati guys, especially the cheaper receivers, because they're so cheap that it doesn't make a difference. And then Mixon becomes even a better play. But I think the Bengals defense is where you should really go. I think the Cardinals are going to be kind of obvious and kind of like the popular non-Giants Cowboys thing. And then after that, like Jaguars against Purdy. Purdy's always prone to do something dumb. Maybe the Steelers against Green Bay, that have something to do. But I think that what you're supposed to do is what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to manually reduce any exposure I get on either the Cowboys or the Giants.
Yeah. All right, Rohde, how about you?
Yeah, you guys mentioned a lot of good stuff, obviously. So the Jaguars are probably my most exposed defense. I like them today.
Nice.
That's a great way to do exactly what Cheech was saying.
I like that.
Yeah, so they're probably my favorite today. They actually have looked pretty good this year on defense. So yeah, the Steelers are another one that's pretty good that you could get different from like the higher end. Love hasn't looked that great. They're lower owned. I don't have any of them in any of my builds right now. I'm either doing some Cowboys, some Bengals, Browns, Cardinals, and Jags, and a little Giants. This is really where I'm at. I'm not building that many lineups today, though.
All right. We're going to talk some stacks real quick. I've got my favorite, like Cincinnati, Houston. It's hard not to get exposure to that game, but obviously stacks included. But I think that there is a chance of that game busting, so I wouldn't I'm probably going to be below most of the stuff outside of like Tank Dell in that one. Seattle, Washington, I think is a great game stack. Detroit and the Chargers are probably my favorite. And Tampa Bay, Tennessee is my favorite, as Sheets would say, hipster type of stack thing. It just seems like a kind of a cool play, and you feel like you're on something nobody else is on. But we'll see how it works out. What do you got for stacks there, Sheets? I know we sort of alluded to a lot of it, but
yeah, again, I'm going to rerun stuff, but nothing weird. Dallas, Cincinnati. I guess Dallas is like I guess I don't say weird, but I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing with that actually. But Cincinnati obviously makes a lot of sense. But yeah, I think every game you could kind of go after here a little bit. Like something about the Chargers game. I know you guys both like it. Something about it just kind of bothers me. I mean, like the Detroit defense is pretty good. I think the Chargers offense has been just terrible, if you want to know the truth. And I don't really know about that game too much. I think the Seattle Washington game we've talked about somewhat, but maybe not enough. I think that one could kind of go off a little bit. Something about the Arizona sides look really cheap. So I guess that's good. Tennessee, Tampa, like you mentioned. I mean, I do think that the Cincinnati Houston game is going to be probably overowned, so you should probably try to pivot off of that a little bit. But again, really no huge stack exposure aside for the ones that I mentioned.
Yeah, I want to fight you back on the Lions and the Chargers thing, but I'm not going to.
No, dude, I'll root, man. I'll totally root.
I dream about this matchup. This is exactly what I want in DFS. I literally want these insane high, for whatever reason, historically, they play and they always try and give the game away and they allow 500 yards passing and then they throw for 400 yards. It just feels like it's a spot where I'm not going to avoid it.
Like the high total game that nobody's playing.
Yeah, and there's no real crowd noise to bother you because it's going to be split 50-50.
Right, that's right.
Jared Goff coming back to LA, I don't know. The whole thing is just I'm buying it. I'm buying all of it. All right, Brody, how about you?
Yeah, man, I'm buying it too. I just keep building lineups, and it just ends up with Detroit and Chargers, Detroit Chargers. So I was like, man, dude, I gotta start building some different stuff here. So I did throw a Will Levis lineup after Bobby's idea. I did add a Taylor Heineke lineup after talking a little bit up on that Atlanta game a little bit. So those are some of the lineups I did. I did do a Brock Purdy because I like some of the cheap Jags on the other side, ETN and Ridley as run backs, but I don't know if I like the stack Trevor Lawrence side. So I did like a Purdy stack with like Kittle and Ayuk type thing. And then I'm doing a lot of Goff and a lot of Herbert, and then some other one. I did throw a Stroud in there. And another one I like is Kyle Murray, and then a Josh Dobbs lineup as well. So those are some of the teams I'm stacking. I might take Bobby and Sheet's idea and get a Geno in here. Would be one of my last stacks, and we'll see where my final lineup ends up going. But that's kind of where we're at right now. So
nice.
All right, so I'm gonna start with my hot take. All right, this is my it's not gonna feel so hot, but it's at least gonna be thematic for what I was talking about like the Mixons and the Devin Singletaries and the Rashaad Whites and of the world. I'm gonna say that Christian McCaffrey gets 40 fantasy points and is in the million maker winning line. That's gonna be
That's awesome.
Like
awesome for me. I got almost 20% of them.
that's gonna be my thing. You'll see Singletary with 9. You'll get Mixon with 11 or whatever it is. And again, McCaffrey starts off with a touchdown floor because it's in his contract. So and maybe that game just goes freaking off. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. All right. I like it. Rohde got a hot one for us?
Ooh, hot one. I like the 3K Rondell Moore.
Ooh,
there you go. I like that.
Yeah.
As my card.
I can get behind that. So my guy is not going to be on the millionaire winning lineup because no one's going to play him. But you can have your pick. I have two guys, and I'm playing them together, and they're both going to be sub 1% owned, and that'd be Quentin Johnston and Jameson Williams.
I'm totally down, and when I'm dead in my 1:00 games, I will be playing those.
And then you get to play the McCaffrey and Eckler with them because you got all the money to spend. It's pretty fun.
Yeah.
All right, so it should be a good one, Rohde. Why don't you finish any final thoughts, and then we'll take us out of here.
No, guys. Thanks for hanging out with us today. Make sure you hit that like button on the way out. Good show. Good info today, guys. Enjoyed it. And as always, let's get it.
Let's get it.